Good morning, everybody, and welcome back from coffee, first of all. So, oh, lovely title. So I'm Nick. For my many multiple sins, I'm the MD of EMEA for Tigerspike and the head of strategy globally. And I'm here today to talk about a somewhat Professor Cox OBE topic. Sounds a little bit too master of the universe for my liking in the next 9.5 minutes I have left. But it's about building a mobile presence, Now, what does that actually mean, and what can I give to you guys today as an audience? Well, to your delight, I'd like to say I'm not going to talk about QR codes, AR, NFC, SEO, so all the things that there are great experts in the audience to talk about in the first place. What I am going to do is talk about organising for success. Now, why would I talk about that? Well, quite simply, how many of you, and no show of hands here, it can be embarrassing, but how many of you have worked with a head of mobile who's moved on rapidly in the last 6 or 12 months? I hear a few laughs in the audience. It's a common thing. How many of you don't feel that your brand is getting the right cut through in terms of what they're trying to achieve with mobile? Is there a still limited uptake of all these marvellous ideas, and it's the 5th year of mobile that we're in? And let's face it, great presentations this morning, fantastic, but 3 of them used the same example from Starbucks. We're kind of a bit stuck. So how do we really take advantage of this? And why is organising for success so important? So of the companies you work for, of the brands you represent, the CEOs, this is Apple's own survey done 6 months ago, 65% of all CEOs say that mobile absolutely is on their agenda. However, problem, they have no idea where to start. And of course, they're going to try and start in a particular way, with a team, a group of people, functionally. But it's easy to catch up. But how do you stay ahead? Because the pace of change in this world is absolutely relentless. And so through a section of case studies, examples, and anecdotes, I'm going to give you an idea of what you guys need as an audience, because you are the future of mobile sat here. This is the biggest mobile advertising conference in the world, as we've already heard. If you don't make a difference, then no one is going to make a difference out there in mobile as a whole. And I'm hoping to go over the future shape of how you will execute campaigns for yourselves and also in the organisations you represent. Also, the agility with which you need to move. I hope through the course of this presentation it's going to become obvious to you that it doesn't really matter that you understand NFC and SEO as it is today, because it's all going to change so rapidly in the next 6 months, it almost doesn't matter that you get today. You have to get tomorrow and where you're going to end up. And I guess, why should I, almost Professor Cox in some ways, but why should I arrogantly stand here and say I've got the answers? Well, I don't. Tigerspike, we just design and we build stuff. We build the Telegraph, we build the Economist. You can see examples, in the back room here of our work. But what we have been doing for the last 8 years, 7.5 years, is working with many, many people like yourselves, and we've built up a raft of, I guess, ideas and understanding of what organisations have done to be successful and failed in terms of creating their mobile strategies. As a result of the people we work with, about 60% of the people we deal with are publishers, because they've been the early adopters. And so a lot of my examples today will be publishing. And I guess for you guys out there as brands, media agencies, it's you guys who have got to catch up to where the publishers are. Some of the guys that we represent globally, Diageo and Pepsi, do they think that they're ahead? Do they think that they're cutting edge in mobile? No, not at all. They fully understand that they're on a journey just like you guys, and they're not there yet. And so hopefully, across the next 17 minutes now, I'm going to help you with some ideas that you can bring back into your organisation to execute. So as a quick, just in case there's any doubters in the audience, I'm going to ask 2 quick questions. So nothing sensationalist, but how many of you get given a phone by work? Yeah, hopefully everybody. Now then, how many of you also get given an application on your phone by work? A few, 5%. Now surely, if we are the world's leading mobile advertising conference, surely we should be seeing a show of hands equal to the number of telephones. We're not eating our own dog food in the industry, and we need to catch up quickly to help our customers stay ahead. So, as we go through now, so we have come from information from TV to laptop, and that mobile purposely isn't there. If I say why, because Twitter's there rather than a mobile phone. I was in our office in Australia. I was there recently working with Woolworths and Foxtel. And Foxtel, very interestingly, they've banned the word mobile in all their meetings as of 3 months ago. Because it's not about a mobile anymore. It's about the devices that their customers are on. Now, whether that device is increasingly, and there are mobiles, there are tablets, there are other devices that are small, usable, we can define a mobile device. But the world has changed. And it reminds me of the tragedy again that's happened in Christchurch only 2 days ago. I was on a flight to New Zealand that particular night when the earthquake happened. We were diverted to Auckland. I had no idea what was happening. Of course, it was my mother. When I got to the airport in Auckland, I turned my phone on. The first text, 2 or 3 texts, in fact, of my mother who knew I was on my way to Christchurch. I'd found out stuff first from her through SMS. So we're all converts here. I get that. Now, you've seen this chart before from our friends at Microsoft, but if you haven't found Mary Meeker on the web, go have a look. Mary Meeker will give you an inordinate amount of free information about the mobile market, where it's going, and where it's heading. And her chart, when she worked at Morgan Stanley, she now set herself up in her own consultancy. But she has shown that clearly there's a crossover point coming. We all know that, and Gartner have even forecast that crossover point to be even earlier in 2013. And I was in conversation the other day with the CEO of Interbrand. How many brands have truly, and how many of you guys as media agencies and brands and companies have thought about the impact of what that actually means? So let's say you traditionally spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on your brand rebrand. You could be British Airways, you know, with an amazing new tail fin. Lovely. But suddenly, 60%, 70% of customers are going to come to you first on a mobile phone. What does that mean for your brand or your customer? What does that mean for you as an individual or as a person? How are you going to get across your brand values? How are you going to get across the impact? Because you've been dealing with a big scale for so many years, how will you suddenly get that cut through that you require from a small screen when 70% of all people are going to be coming to you first on that device? How are you going to line yourselves up internally? What's the talent you need, the structure and the organisation you need inside your companies to advise your customers to enable you to do that? Now, next one, we know it's big. Yeah, fair enough. It's not only big in mobile, it's also big in tablets. There's going to be 300 million tablets in a couple of years' time. But that's all going to change. Because the makeup now is going to be wholly different in 2 years' time. So look at Apple now, look at Android. You know, Apple is our darling. We're all Apple fans in this room, but there are millions of consumers outside of this room who aren't Apple fans. The majority of the world are still on other devices. And that not only will change, but that's even going to get further increase. So look, in 2 years' time, 50% of the entire marketplace will have Android phones. What does that actually mean, again, for a brand? If you know Apple is a target demographic, if you know that Android is a different demographic, does that mean for your brand that you're going to have a different content strategy for Android devices versus iPhone devices? Is the type of device going to actually be the thing that helps you access a different customer base? And if that changes, what about tablets? You're pretty safe now, aren't you, with iPad? 84% of the entire marketplace. Only in 2 years' time, Android will have 40, maybe even higher percent. But the dynamic, of course, is that this 14% here is currently made up of 130 different devices. This of one device. You could say two, because there are two versions now, but fundamentally it's one device. 130 different Android tablets. Who knows how many there'll be in 2 years' time as part of that 40%? Again, for you guys, massive change. How do you keep yourself ahead of serving content and adverts and types of things to all these different devices? What's going to happen when suddenly tablets, as they are in the States now, moving to pay-as-you-go? So $50 a month, you can now get the Motorola Zoom. That means the demographic getting the Motorola Zoom is fundamentally different and younger to the iPad. Again, if you're accessing a consumer group through the tablet, the device itself, what does that mean for the way you serve content and adverts to those devices? All of these questions are going to only increase and get even more profound as we go on. So how are organisations starting to think about the fact that these devices are fundamentally changing the way that we live and are also going to change the way that we work? Unless internally you've got people or individuals or teams aligned to this, you are not going to keep up with the pace of change in this marketplace. And who knows, with the likes of our people at Google and Microsoft, imagine the resources they've got investing in mobile. People like Terry Leahy standing up now as Tesco's and talking about mobile as part of his platform speech. We know it's here. But what is it about this thing that makes it very different? We know that these devices feel different. We know we should treat them differently, but what does that really mean in terms of content and services? Well, I was at an internal conference about 2 weeks ago, and there were 40 people at this internal conference of a publisher. And they were asked, somewhat surreptitiously, by their CEO to say, right, you're some of our brightest and best. Yeah, we've got you here today because we see you as the future of X, Y, and Z. And they had two topics. One was mobile, and the second was a different topic. And they were asked secretly to say how many of them had had an idea in mobile that had been squashed or mistaken or never happened. 40% of this high-performing audience felt that their organisation didn't understand or had squashed the ideas that they had. And what does that mean for you guys in your companies and the brands that you represent of how you're going to overcome some of the barriers to making these things happen? How can we be here in a year's time with more examples than we can possibly deal with in this amazing world that we're facing into? And if you think about it, we are talking about today smartphones and tablets. But the rapid spread of applications and access and HTML5 the FT have done is going to suddenly mean, look at the adverts now for the Samsung TV. It's on TV now over the weekend. They've done a great deal with LoveFilm and Skype. So suddenly, a TV also takes a wholly new personal aspect. We're going to be talking about devices in a very short time, and your brands are going to want to advertise in different ways on these devices, and are you prepared? So now, three slightly different stories, I guess, in the last 10 minutes of how different organisations are starting to think about how they can effectively build a closer relationship with their audience, and internally, how they're structuring themselves. So first of all, TalkSport. I had the rare honour of being in a panel a couple of weeks ago with Darren Gough and Stan Collymore. So we tended to talk about cricket, football, and unfortunately dogging on stage, which Stan is not a shy man, should we say, and how he talks about his past. Very interesting indeed. In front of 400 people was even more interesting. Yeah. Now, how are TalkSport, so not what are they doing? Yes, they're going to have a mobile presence, but how are TalkSport organising themselves internally to take advantage of this? Clearly, there are different ways you can do this. For TalkSport, it's actually getting people involved who already they know love Twitter and social media. So Darren Gough and Stan Collymore have like 60, 110,000 followers on Twitter. They are social media guys. They're getting involved in helping design the TalkSport product. They're getting a special team together inside TalkSport to really make sure that they can absolutely realise the fundamentals of it. That's one way to do it. Think about The Economist. The Economist did it in a different way. They said, this has to be a different part of our business, but with not a Chinese wall, but a perforated wall. We're going to get an MBA who has a fresh thinker. He's going to report to the CEO. He's going to enable him to do crazy, amazing things. Once he's got a really good plan, we're going to give him one of our brightest and best people, a guy called Oscar Grutt, who's the managing director of digital, and they formed a new team around them. That was their way of cocooning and incubating what were very sensitive ideas and very change-privy ideas for the organisation at the time, and they then blossomed out. And the surprising things they found with 1.5 million downloads, with the audio, with thousands of people now coming through the application to tell them how much they like it and what they want every day. An entirely new relationship has been built with this audience. With things like Eureka, you've got the opportunity to surprise not only yourselves but also your customers, because this is about different ways to take advantage of content. And whether you're talking about rotating brains, you know, you're talking about 3D bicycles, but this is where a special team was put together for a special project. And I'm talking about publishers, content people, ourselves, all together across a very, very tight period. Does that inform the organisation long term? No, it doesn't. So for you guys, what you must start thinking about is going beyond the obvious. Everybody out there knows about AR and SEO now. However, you know, when you're thinking about a new game or a new app or a new mobile site, don't think about the obvious. Go beyond it. Make sure you go from content to related to the social environment. And what's beyond that? Is it really all about numbers? Is it about the stickiness of the relationships that you have with your customers? All of us for many years have been focusing on very tight audiences. Suddenly with digital gone, aha, suddenly the world needs to know about us. Is that the case, or should you also be trying to define your audience very tightly and form a very, very sticky relationship with them? And so, if you haven't read Brand Glue by Paul Harner, I recommend you do. It's an old take on a new subject. It's about the obsession with numbers versus the obsession with stickiness. And today, I think now, with the number of apps we've got out there, and mobile as a whole, it's becoming about stickiness and CRM. And what is sticky, really? Sticky, and this is a quick cheat in the last 2 slides here, but if you want to think about anything from a perspective of a team, internally or externally, there are so many ways to do it. The Telegraph that you'll see out there, Ed Rousseau's on the panel later, they did it the wrong way, they did it the right way. The wrong way was to set up a completely unique and different business in Houston Partners. And that became too different to the main business. What they've now done brilliantly is wrap some of their best people, including Ed, back into a business unit inside the Telegraph to create the future. And then suddenly they're working together as a cohesive team. And when you are thinking about these things, if you can manage in mobile and with devices to combine content with fun and utility, you'll have the right success. Because all your brands own content. You can have apps individually that are fun, like Angry Birds, but you can have utility. It's by having all three together that becomes something like Telegraph 2.0 you can see later today. Because content is news, fun is crossword, but it's the way, and this is the challenge for you guys, forget for now about AR and SEO and all the different dynamics out there. Think more structurally about how your media agency, your brand, your company is organising itself for success. Because otherwise, you're going to be 6 months down the road and there are going to be more new ideas that have been squashed or killed or by the roadside than you can possibly imagine. The only way you're going to stay ahead is to not make the same mistakes that many others have made. And if there's any way you can do that, then please, I'll be around all day, so on my team, but if you guys have frustrations or you want to learn to do things differently, just come have a chat. I'm not, as again, we're not the consultants. We're just people that have had 8 years of experience working out how we can help you guys make a difference. And fundamentally, if you guys have a belief, if you guys have a view in your organisation about how mobile should be, express that and get a senior sponsor. That's the only way we see change start in the customers that we work with. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Quick one. Great messages there, and I think Nic Hewitt from the Telegraph would be very pleased with you for presenting this fantastic product. So slightly point-headed question, actually, because we were talking about third-party ad serving earlier on being a really important part. But you also said, well, Christ, there's 138 tablets there, and there's going to be gazillions over here. So how big a problem is that actually going to be to get distribution to so many different devices?
Distribution itself, these guys are solving the distribution issue. That's not the issue. The issue is going to be how relevant your message is going to be on those different devices. And whether from a strategic perspective it's right to have the same message across them all, or begin to segment your message by what is going to be different demographics by device. That's going to be the complexity rather than delivery.
Okay, and then you get to real one-to-one marketing ultimately, yes. Okay, many thanks, Nick. Brilliant.
Thank
Cheers.
you.